Alright, well, hello there, people of the world. You're cool, I'm cool, we're all super cool. So, welcome to my channel, So Cool's a Lot. This video today is about medicine cooler prototyping, and more specifically, exploring the question of can a YETI Rambler transport a 3-month supply of refrigerated medicine? So let's jump on in. First of all, here are my usual disclaimers. One important one that I want to mention this time is YETI Rambler gallon jugs. This company and these products are not designed for medicine cooling. They're for camping, they're for beverage transportation, and so on. So this video is entirely educational, exploratory, and curious. YETI does not make any claims about medicine cooling, and so I just want to make sure that this is very clear with my disclaimers. Let's keep on going. So of course, actually I would also like to wish you all a very happy June and July. There are lots of holidays, lots of observances, and lots of celebrations going on around the world. On the right and on the left here in font size 2 is a list of many of those holidays, observances, and celebrations. So wherever you are, I just want to take a moment to wish you a very happy June and July. Alright, so now for the prototyping. First of all, just a couple of parameters and goals that I sort of guardrails, sort of design guardrails that I put in place here for this prototyping work. So the goal was I wanted to transport 12 Zepbound pens, which is basically a 3-month supply, 4 per month. Interestingly enough, Zepbound pens are some of the clunkier pens. They have big cap bases, and so being able to transport 12 Zepbound pens probably translates into a lot bigger supply with some of the many other refrigerated products that are out there. So kind of a worst case. And also for testing purposes and prototyping purposes, I primarily only have Zepbound pens. For the transportation period, I wanted to focus on maintaining a temperature of 36 to 46 Fahrenheit. I especially didn't want to freeze any product, and then of course keeping product below 46 is important because once you go past that threshold, you can only keep that product for a few weeks at the most, and you can't return it back to refrigerated temperature. And so that's not convenient if you're trying to transport a 3-month supply, obviously. In terms of journey time, in back and forth conversations with some of my subscribers, there was a lot of interest in being able to cover at least a 30-hour window, so I made note of that. And then finally, of course, with any transportation product, you want to make sure that it actually protects the product that you're transporting from damage, and then possibly if there are any solutions for if you have an emergency, can you go for longer with more ice or whatever. So I'll also kept that in mind. So here's just a quick visual of the YETI Rambler so you can see what kind of space the container has. So it's obviously a pretty sizable item, and in some of the later slides you'll be able to see that more closely in relation to the medicine products. For my typical setups, I use a lot of switch bots, temperature probes. I use Tempify probes. I use Elitech digital temperature thermometers that have been certified, calibrated to ensure that I have very accurate temperature readings, and I actually use those calibrated temperature probes to calibrate the SwitchBots and my other thermometers just before or after I use them for various testing. Now you can actually see a picture of the YETI Rambler, and to the side there you can also see some of the Zepbound pens. So you can kind of start to get a bit of a feel here for just how big this unit is. Also, that's a picture of my little testing desk where I'm doing a lot of my experimental work. So this video, I'm going to tell you the story in 4 parts, and part number 4 is the exciting part where I actually present to you the recipe that allows for a YETI Rambler to be used for transportation of medicine product. Spoiler alert, I was able to figure out how to successfully do that. I did a lot of work behind the scenes. Part 1 through 4 is just a taste of some of the interesting or key work that I did, that I came across. And so I'm going to present that because I think it will be sort of educationally interesting for you to sort of see the thought process of the work, and then also a little bit, it will give you your own ideas about how things may or may not work when you're playing around with your own setup. So in this first part, this was really exploratory. I did a lot of exploratory testing just to see how the YETI Rambler would perform. In this data set, basically all I did was I placed some Zepbound pens in the middle of the container with some temperature probes at different positions, and then I wrapped those pens with, it's called a Cool-It gel pack. You can get this online. I happen to have quite a lot of these hanging around, and so I figured I'll just use this for testing, see what happens. So these gel packs were placed in the freezer overnight. The pens were placed in the fridge overnight, and then everything was kind of brought together to give this a little test run and see what happens. In all of these videos, I don't use any live medicine product, of course, because I don't want to risk, destroying good product for no reason. So all the medicine product shown here has already been previously used. So here's the temperature profile for what this looks like. So basically, couple of things that are interesting. Amazingly, it actually stayed below 46 Fahrenheit for nearly 31 hours. So I was quite excited that on my first shot attempt at playing around with this actually did pretty well. You can, I think, also see very quickly that it's kind of a bad idea to have ice packs sitting right on top of your medicine product, because you are going to expose your medicine product to freezing for a period of time. And as you can see in this case, the medicine product probably stayed at below freezing temperatures, actually significantly below freezing temperatures, even went down to like 25 Fahrenheit for a few hours, 2-3 hours at 25 Fahrenheit. And it probably stayed below 32 for about 4-ish hours or something. And so right away, you can already start to think about, well, how am I going to set up this system to work in terms of, I need the frozen ice packs for the cooling energy, but I also at the same time need to protect my medicine product from sub-zero freezing temperatures. So let's keep on going. But this was kind of a cool first pass. It gave me a lot of ideas around how I might want to approach the setup. So then, after quite a bit of playing around and other things, I made what I'm going to call a pen holding rig. So this pen holding rig was sort of designed to allow about 12 Zepbound pens to be held together and for them to sort of sit in the center of the container, and then around the periphery of this container there would be the gel pack. I also so I was using EVA foam for this. These are discs that you can sort of cut out for various shapes and so on. And then the other part that I started playing around with was the idea of, well, how do you create a little bit of an insulation barrier between the drug product and the gel packs. And so in this round here, I started playing a little bit around with bubble wrap. The bubble wrap that I have here came with some pharmacy product that I received, so I figured, yeah, why not use it? Of course, during testing, I often had to replace pen positions with temperature probes, or remove the caps of the product so I could fit in temperature probes and so on, but this was all for experimental purposes. I would not actually remove a Zepbound cap from a pen that's transporting live product for sterility reasons. So let's take a look at how this setup performed. So results started looking even more interesting and exciting. So on one hand, some positions within the container stayed below 46 Fahrenheit for as long as 78 hours. So 78 hours is very, very cool. However, some locations within the container stayed below 46 Fahrenheit for as little as 46 hours or even 6 hours. So as you can see, depending on where you are positioned or where your product's positioned within the container, there's quite a bit of a sort of a temperature profile gradient that exists in terms of being able to keep your medicine product cool. And then excitedly, the bubble wrap, or starting to introduce a little bit of an insulation layer from direct contact with the frozen ice packs, has dividends, and so you can basically protect your product from being exposed to freezing temperatures by doing that. So very cool. Not yet perfect, but this certainly gave me a lot of cool ideas to play with. One thing I'll mention is, although I'm showing you this presentation in 4 parts, behind the scenes I actually did a lot more experimental work, but I just don't want to bore you with everything. I'm just giving you a little bit of a taste of some of the concepts that I was playing around with, so that you can play with your own ideas if you're interested, or at least get a really good fundamental understanding of what may or may not work. Alright, so just maybe a visualization of the problem with the part 2 prototyping. Basically, if the pens were more to the lower side of the container and not so much towards the center of the container, or positioned a little bit higher, more towards the cap, they would stay very cool. However, there was a kind of a warm area, or like a hot spot, where the container was basically not able to stay at the refrigerated temperature, or at the desired refrigerated temperature. One thing to always think about with thermos flask type designs, the thermos flask being the containers that will have sort of this double layer vacuum wall, the weak spot is typically always the cap, or the cap of the container. This is where the thermal transfer of energy will be its highest, and the cooling energy will basically get lost through the cap. And so this kind of makes sense that you have a warm spot towards the center and the upper part of this arrangement. But this gave me some new ideas to think about. The big one was, what I realized was, the medicine product, the best position to have the medicine product is to have it basically sit around the periphery of the container against the wall, so that it's sort of evenly positioned, evenly distributed, and it's not sort of sitting in this hot spot near where the entrance of the container is. And so that's maybe one thing to think about. So let me take you on this journey a little bit further, and you'll sort of see what I mean with this idea. Okay, so a little bit of a sidestep here. With the next prototyping round, I got a little bit more creative with the setup. And so as you sort of saw, I was starting to use what's called EVA foam. EVA foam is used by costume cosplayers. They use it to make all their cool costumes and armory. It's very easy to use. It's very easy to craft, cut, and so on. And I had quite a bit of this laying around. And I also had the cutting kits that go with it. So here's just some visuals to give you a taste of what all this looks like if you're interested in trying to somewhat replicate what I did here. And then I also started focusing in on a YETI ice pack. The YETI ice pack, the 1 pound one, was quite sizable. It fit really nicely in the Rambler, and so I started playing around with using it in addition to the gel packs that you already previously saw. So now that you've kind of seen the construction materials, let's keep on going. So in this next round, so what I did was, of course, at the base of the Rambler, I had an EVA foam disc that was really just sitting at the bottom, and its main purpose was just for transportation purposes, a little bit of a buffer to make sure that none of the product breaks. The base of the Rambler was a little bit curved, so another problem that had to be dealt with is if you line up an array of injector pens around the circumference of the Rambler, they will all fall towards the middle because of the curve at the base, and so you actually need to build a little bit of a ledge that's kind of flatter, or the ledge is curved outwards, and so that then allows you to be able to line up an array of pens along the circumference, the wall of the Rambler, and they will actually stay in position. In terms of the ice pack, of course, I mentioned that you have to insulate the ice pack from being in direct contact with your product. And so in this prototyping round, I was playing around with using cardboard insulation. Actually, this cardboard piece came directly from the shipper that I'd received for a 3-month supply of Zepbound. So it gives you kind of an idea of the thickness and size of an insulation layer that a pharmacy uses when they do ice shipping of medicine product. It's not a small thing. You definitely need quite a bit of insulation to protect you from direct contact with ice packs. So this gives you a visual of the setup. So I have the ice pack in the middle, I have cardboard insulation that surrounds it, I used a couple of EVA foam discs to hold everything in place, I have the Zepbound pens all lined up around the edge, I use temperature probes at different locations to measure the temperature, and let's take a look and see how this all performs. Little closer zooming in there just so you can kind of see that a little bit more carefully, and then here you can see the EVA foam there in position to try and sort of hold everything in shape. Video wise, just here's one of the cutting devices. This is the one that makes the discs. There's a little blade on the inside, you spin it around until you kind of cut the EVA foam, and you can create those sort of discs. So I thought I'd just kind of quickly give you a little taste around how you can play around with EVA foam and make different shapes and stuff. And then on the right side, this sort of gives you a bit of an idea of how I'd sort of set up the YETI Rambler. It's becoming a little bit of a tongue twister there with the Y's and the R's. So as you can see, you know, the EVA foam disc is nice because you can make all sorts of little shapes that can you know, you can make ledges and holders and different kinds of things like that. So of course this is prototyping, so I didn't get too carried away with perfectioning the quality of the cuts and other things. This was, you know, just playing around with different ideas. So here you can kind of see a little bit of what I mean about you need to create a more of a flatter ledge to be able to stack a whole row of Zepbound pens around the circumference without them sort of leaning or falling into the middle, but actually leaning outwards and leaning towards the wall. This was a little bit extra fiddly for me because some of the Zepbound pens actually had temperature probes attached to them, and so they're naturally off balance, and so it takes a little bit of work to get them into position. But this gives you kind of a little bit of a feel for how I kind of set up this part 3 experiment. So now that all of the pens are in place, you can basically put the ice pack in the middle, which is surrounded by the cardboard. So this video, of course, doesn't use any live product, as I mentioned, and then this was a demonstration of how it's set up. So right now all of the components here are room temperature, but in the live test the ice pack in the middle is left overnight in the freezer, and then all of the other components are basically from the fridge prior to being packed into this arrangement. So here's the temperature profile for what this looks like. So a couple of cool things, and then let me sort of journey you through it. So you can see different temperature probes taking the temperature. One thing you'll notice is the duration, 25 hours, not quite as good as the previous one with the gel packs, but definitely interesting in the sense that it stays sort of in that 46 to 36 or above freezing zone. For some of the temperature probes, the temperature probe that was on the corner of the cardboard thermal insulation that wasn't quite well as protected, you can actually see more directly the effect of having a more direct line of sight to the ice pack. It gets exposed to freezing temperatures, and so that was sort of interesting to see. But overall, this was very, very informative and very helpful to me, because on one hand it gave me a good idea of how ice packs work, how ice packs in the center work, the importance of needing a good sort of insulation layer around the ice pack to protect the product. And then finally I started to realize that actually the ice pack, the solo ice pack in the center didn't have enough of a kick to be able to last more than 25 hours in terms of cooling. And what I'd also realized was I was losing a lot of space to basically insulation layer. And so I put a little bit of thought into what I might be able to do with this. So now moving on to part 4, which actually really is the star of the show for this video, and how I was able to get things set up to make a YETI Rambler be usable for medicine transportation. So let me share the notes that I collected here. Of course, I did a lot of behind-the-scenes testing to get to this point, so just sort of keep that in mind, that I'm not telling you the whole story. So the first important thing is I played around with the question of, if you have a YETI Rambler sitting out in your house or whatever, it's sitting there at room temperature, and by the time you use it, you sort of pack it up, you pack it with your ice and other things like that, you're going to lose quite a bit of your thermal energy, let's call it that, because the Rambler is at room temperature, and you're going to lose energy in actually trying to bring it down to sort of refrigerated temperatures when you add the ice packs and other things. So what I realized was, in order to really optimize the length of time that you could keep your product at refrigerated temperature, you needed a step to pre-cool the Rambler down to refrigerated or lower temperatures before you even pack it. And so you don't then lose some of your thermal energy in having to cool down the system after it's been packed. It's basically already at the temperature, and then all you're doing is sustaining that temperature versus actually cooling it down to that temperature, if that makes sense. So the protocol I developed here was basically, before you use the Rambler to pack with your medicine product, cool it down. And what I did was I used what's called turret ice pack sort of tubes. I used 4 of them. I dropped 4 of them in the Rambler, and I left them there for 2 hours. Actually, what'll happen is the Rambler will cool down to freezer temperatures. So it'll cool down to probably about 25 Fahrenheit when you do this. But just keep in mind that when you open up the Rambler back up and then you remove those ice packs, it will start to warm back up to room temperature very quickly. And so by the time you go through the process of packing the Rambler with your medicine product, it will settle out to be around about refrigeration temperature, which is exactly where you want it to be, but you haven't lost any of your thermal energy because it's been kind of pre-chilled. So that's maybe point 1 that will translate into the successful recipe that I'm presenting here. So quick version of this: pre-chill your Rambler using ice packs for 2 hours before you plan to pack it, and then when you are ready to pack it, remove those ice packs right away, start the packing process. By the time you've done your packing, within a couple of minutes, everything will essentially balance out to refrigerated temperature. The next part here is just to walk you through the process of how I approach the packing of the Rambler with medicine product. So the first part, as I mentioned, I used the wall of the container to line up all the pens. So all the Zepbound pens are lined up around the circumference of the container, and then in the middle I'm using I have the ice pack that's been left overnight in the freezer. And then the new twist to this, which really I think makes it all work, is rather than having cardboard insulation or some let's call it non-functional non-thermal functional insulation, so it's not providing any cooling to the system, I switched this out and started using the Cool-It gel packs to contribute to the cooling, but also act as a thermal barrier from the ice pack. So the gel packs were basically placed overnight in the fridge, so they were brought down to refrigeration temperature, so 36 to 46 Fahrenheit. And so this was what I think is the key to success here. So you have an ice pack in the middle, but then you surround that ice pack with gel packs that have been cooled at refrigerated temperature. I use quite a lot of these gel packs because I really want to maximize the utilization of the space for both cooling and insulation, to cool the container, but also to protect the medicine product from getting too cold. So I I think I have like 6 of these gel pack panels that come together to make this setup, and actually I have a video that I'm going to show in a minute so you can see exactly how this looks visually. And then finally, as I also mentioned, the container is the weak spot. The container cap, or the entrance to the thermo flask, is usually the weak spot when it comes to the thermodynamics. That's where most of the energy is lost or transferred. And so I added an EVA panel at that position to really maximize the insulation of this setup. So here is a video of how this all comes together. So this video noted that it was done at room temperature, so it's just for demonstration purposes. In the real packing, the ice pack would have come out of the freezer pretty much right away, and then all the gel packs and medicine product would have been sitting in the fridge. And then of course the Rambler itself would have gone through that pre-conditioning cooling cycle that I mentioned, where I'd left it with ice packs for 2 hours before using it, so that it's been nicely chilled. So here you can see I put an EVA foam at the base, then I put a little circular EVA foam to create this sort of ledge. Then this ledge allows me to basically put all the pens around the circumference of the Rambler without them falling in towards the middle. If you are doing counting here, you will actually count 11 Zepbound pens, not 12. Interestingly enough, when you perfectly array Zepbound pens around the circumference of the Rambler, you can only fit 11 pens comfortably with the bases. With a little bit more delicacy, you could probably squeeze in a 12th, but I didn't want to do that here. I wanted everything to be fairly uniform and comfortably fitting. So here you can see I placed the ice pack in the middle. Then I've got the gel packs. This is there's 3 panels being used here for this gel pack. So I'm basically getting those in position, and then of course I've got some individual gel panels. And what I'm doing here is I'm making sure that no matter what the position is, all the medicine product is shielded by at least 1 panel, if not more. And so I'm tucking these gel panels to be kind of in the seams of the other panels, and so on and so forth, to really make sure this is nicely packed and that the medicine product is well protected from the ice pack in the middle. And of course what you will also notice is I've really maximized the use of the space. So all the space now in this container is either the ice, the refrigerated gel packs that are also acting as insulation from the ice, and then the circumference, which is the medicine product. And then, as I mentioned, I also put an EVA foam disc right by the entrance to make sure that it's very nicely insulated. And ladies and gentlemen, this is what equals the recipe for success with this prototyping session. So let me show you what that looks like in terms of the temperature profile. So here it is. So basically, journeying you through this temperature profile, here are all the probes sitting at room temperature. If you're following my little mouse pointer, all the probes then go into the fridge. They're sitting in the fridge for a while. I start the 2-hour preconditioning of the YETI Rambler before I remove everything from the fridge. Then I remove everything from the fridge and pack it, just as you saw in that previous video. You can see there's a little bit of a blip in the temperature profile, and then of course then the YETI Rambler is closed, and as you can see, it stays below 46 Fahrenheit for a whopping 88 hours, which is absolutely awesome. One of the temperature probes that I had, I actually positioned it a little bit closer to the ice pack. I was curious to see how important the gel packs were, and the answer is they're very important. You can kind of see that if you don't have a comfortable gel pack layer, your medicine product's gonna be exposed to lower temperatures. But all the other temperature probes, as you can see, were hovering around actually the 36 Fahrenheit mark, which is awesome. And actually, maybe the other thing to note is, under no conditions, even removing from the fridge and all of that, did any of this product either fall below 32 freezing or go above 46. And so yeah, this is basically the money shot for this exciting presentation on the question of, is it possible to use a YETI Rambler to transport a 3-month supply of medicine for 30 hours? And the answer is basically yes, it is. And so I hope you find the information within this video very interesting in terms of possible setups. Having seen this data set, I would absolutely 100% use a YETI Rambler if I had an emergency at home where my fridge failed, or there was a major power cut and I needed to protect a 3-month supply of medicine. I would, having seen this data set here, I would immediately use this as my emergency protocol. The only looming question that remains for me at this point is, I don't know for sure what a TSA staff member would think about this when you take this 1-gallon Rambler through the airport and put it through a screening machine. That said, theoretically and hypothetically speaking, you're not breaking any rules. The TSA rules do exempt items that are for refrigerating and cooling medicine products. So theoretically speaking, you should be able to take this through an airport, but my disclaimer on this one is, I have not done this. I don't know if I will be in a position to try this, but if you're going on a camping trip, a long drive across the country or whatever, of course you won't need to go through a TSA screen, and so this could be a very, very viable way to do that. Perhaps you have to move across the state, so you need to you're in the process of moving from one house to another, and you need to transport a larger supply of medicine. Perhaps this could be a helpful way to do that. So that is everything that I'm going to share with you today on this presentation. So last but not least, just a couple of closing words. Thank you for watching this video. I almost, the perfectionist in me almost prevented me from posting this today. I was, prototyping is kind of crude, things don't look perfect. Can you make things a little bit better? Yes. So the perfectionist in me was still holding me a little bit back, but I decided that I'd reached the point where things were good enough here. I was really excited about the 88 hours, and so I wanted to just put a line in the sand and share with you where I'm at. I may go back to this project in the future. I don't know. I've got a lot of travel going on right now, so I may tinker with this some more. But I was very excited to be able to at least get this to a good enough state to answer the question around whether this was possible or not. And the answer is, it is possible. So that's it. Have a wonderful day, and talk to you again.